have a special guest today that's really going to talk about her journey in family, her journey in through adoption, and now how she is empowering this next generation. So joining us today is Sasha Vella, an award-winning real estate agent and licensed financial coach in the GTA. She's also a woman of faith and mother of two, and she's very active in her community and passionate about sharing her story of resilience. So welcome to the show, Sasha. We're so grateful that you're here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So your story, you have a story of much resilience, and it started with being adopted. Can you share a bit about your story? Give us a bit of background on that.
Yeah, definitely. So from the day I was born, I beat the odds. I was born addicted to drugs. My mother battled with addiction. My father was in and out of incarceration, which he later died in jail. And I had somewhat of an untraditional upbringing, I would say. I was back and forth between my mother's care and foster care before I was adopted by my family. And I was actually adopted on my dad's birthday, my adopted dad's birthday. So I often say my father in heaven gave me a father on earth, and we're very close. I'm very close with my whole adopted family. And, you know, it took some time to settle in, definitely. But in reflection, it's so beautiful because I've seen what I've gone through, and I've reflected on what God has brought me through and why he's brought me through it, to get me through it, to give him the glory. But not only that, but it's built the resilience. And I didn't understand that when I was younger.
Yeah.
Until now in my adulthood, I'm like, man, that really rooted that resilience and that faith. So I'm very grateful for what I've gone through. It's been challenging at times. You know, as a 4-year-old, you aren't necessarily set in your ways. That's when I was adopted at 4. You're not necessarily set in your ways, but you know what you like and what you don't like.
Right.
So I came with a lot of trauma and healing that needed to be addressed.
Yeah.
But my parents poured unconditional love. And I think that's also where the resilience comes from, is that I was so loved as a child.
Yeah.
And it really helped me understand how to love back. When you're poured into, you can pour out.
Yeah, that's amazing. And actually, part of your story is that you were adopted into a white family and you grew up with a lot of racism because, you know, for some people, they didn't know how to navigate that in your life. So what was that like, and how did it sort of shape who you are today and your self-perception?
Yeah, I went through a lot of racism. I was one of the only Black children in my grade school. I think one of the 2. And at times it felt like one of the only Black, residents of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
My parents are white. I have an adopted Korean sister who was adopted at birth, and I have 2 brothers who are my parents' biological children.
Yeah.
So my parents taught me, racism came from all angles. It came at school, it came at the stores, it came from the neighbors. And my parents instilled in me integrity, self-worth, and owning who you are. Your skin color doesn't define who you are.
Yeah.
Your hair texture doesn't define who you are. What you've been through doesn't define who you are. And they allowed me to be who I was. I was a very loud, bold little girl. And in a lot of family homes, we hush our children.
Right.
And of course there's a time and place, and we have to parent.
Yeah.
But my parents really allowed me to be who I was and nurtured
that.
my confidence.
Yeah.
My dad would take me trick-or-treating separate from the other kids so I could have the time to socialize and ask about the cats in their home and, take my time. And he really nurtured that gift of gab. And, my mom had a lot of patience with me when I was out and about, and they understood. And I think they felt early on that, man, God really gave her a gift.
Yeah.
And we're going to nurture that as much as we can. Racism, surprisingly, didn't just come from, it also came within my community. There was a point where I wasn't necessarily Black enough for Black people, or white enough for Black people. I was too white in the Black community and too Black in the white community.
Okay, right.
So if my parents didn't nurture that confidence and that self-worth within me to know that I am who I am and I'm proud, I don't know where I would be without them, without God, without my faith, without knowing who I am and whose I am.
Yeah, I love that. It's such an important thing as parents to instill in our children very young that they are first and foremost children of God, while at the same time seeing who they are, right? Who God's created them to be. So you have so much going on in your life. You are an entrepreneur, you're a financial coach, and you also pour into this next generation of leaders, of people, and you mentor them. Why and how are you doing that?
Yeah, I think it would be selfish for me to keep my gifts to myself.
Mm,
I think that if I only, I'm a mother of two, and I think that if I only thought of my daughter as and my son as the only ones to pour into, that would be selfish. I think God again brought me through what I've been through for
yeah,
me to share and bring others through it
yeah.
and to be an example of his love and his faithfulness. I think that mentorship to me is sowing seeds of empowerment, purpose, encouragement that will outlast me and
Love
outlast,
that. Yeah,
what I'm here, how long I'm here for.
yeah.
And I do this through different programs, through my own service. And we've also launched a nonprofit, United Scarborough Initiative organization. And we're so excited to be able to mentor the youth there and pour back into the community. I think it's essential. I think that you go through what you go through and it's God's plan, and you need to show others and be vulnerable of what he's brought you through so that you can help others.
hmm I love that. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story today. A story certainly of resilience and a story of empowerment. And so I know people watching will be empowered by that. So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Well, if you want to know more information on Sasha and what she does, you can go to 700club.ca.